Mob Psycho 100. At first, I didn't really give that much attention to this anime. I recall my friend recommending the show to me saying, "Oh, you should watch this. It's a really good anime." I then looked it up, saw the art style, and said to myself, there's no way I'm watching this. There's just no way. At the time, I thought that a good art style equates to a good anime, and just by looking at one of the images from the show, I immediately went no. What convinced me to give this show a try was a clip of Onigawara, I'm not sure if I said that right, beating the shit of one of his friends. I was like, wait a minute. That's a JoJo reference. Onigawara literally looks like Josuke from JoJo's. Even his Demon Rush might be a reference to Josuke's Stand Rush. Now, I'm a big fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and for those who don't know, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is another anime which I really adore, and having a reference in the show was enough for me to consider watching it. Mob Psycho 100 is a manga and anime series written by the author one, which is also the author of One Punch Man. I haven't actually watched the show, maybe I will in the future. But what I do know is, if you compare the popularity of these two shows, One Punch Man without a doubt completely overshadows Mob Psycho. And I can kinda see why. Both shows revolves around the plot that the main character is ridiculously overpowered, though both have different takes on the character's overpoweredness. One Punch Man's main character seems to be more focused on raw power and intense fight scenes, while Mob Psycho mostly focuses on other aspects, like friendship, self-improvement, and more, which I will talk about later on the video. And that may be the reason why One Punch Man is much more popular, because people love to see the hero of the story blitz through their enemies with ease. But I can assure you that Mob Psycho is much more than a character trampling over weaklings. With that being said, the story revolves around Shigeo Kageyama, also known as Mob, who is a middle schooler with incredible psychic powers. Mob is a disciple of Reagan Arataka, who is actually just a self-proclaimed psychic and does not actually have psychic powers, unlike Mob. Reagan basically runs a business scam where he solves imaginary problems and claims that an evil spirit caused it. However, in times where an actual spirit shows up, he brings Mob along to exorcise them. In short, this is an anime about a grown-ass man manipulating a child just for money. Yes, that's it. That's the whole story. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Just kidding. It may seem that way, but there's more to these two than meets the eye. Now, what's really great about Mob's character is, as insane as his psychic abilities are, he still struggles with his day-to-day life. In fact, Mob is actually a socially awkward loner. He doesn't have friends, doesn't have personality, and he even lacks social skills. It's like he pumped all his skill points in one stat and just ignored everything else. Now where have I heard of this before? To everyone around Mob, he is just a background character. In their eyes, Mob is just completely irrelevant. I mean, the only thing Mob has going for him is his psychic powers, but that doesn't really help him by much. He tried several times to show his powers and was like, "Look, I can bend this spoon. I can make this dog float in the air. I can turn your bones inside out. I'm definitely not an emotionally unstable psychopath." Despite all this display of skill, nobody really paid much attention. This just proves that no matter what status you have, what talents you possess, you can't use these factors to be ahead of anyone in life. You have to struggle. You have to suffer. You have to wash a random guy's dog just because your master told you to do so, just like any other human being. And so he did. Mob realizes that his abilities isn't really gonna get him anywhere in terms of social development. And this makes him so much more human despite having an incredible feat of strength. Well, not physically, we know that much. Throughout the entire show, there's one theme that keeps resonating: self-improvement. Mob took steps towards self-improvement and began his journey. He picked up a couple of weights, tried to run even though he's anemic, tried a new hobby, and a lot more. And throughout his journey, he met people like the Body Improvement Club, who might seem a bunch of mean meatheads at first, but are actually the best bros you can ask for. Teru, who at first was an enemy, then realizes the errors in his ways and changed. And even an evil spirit named Dimple, who was actually only pretending to be Mob's friend, but later evolved to buffed Pikachu to save Mob.
Pikachu! Use Thunderbolt! Pikachu!
And ironically, he gained friends while he was on his path to improve himself. He was just a work in progress at the time, and yet he still met these amazing people. But his desire for a better version of himself is not the only thing that contributed to his friendships. Mob was also very kind. Kind in ways that not normal people could possibly comprehend. He always looked for the best in people, no matter how twisted they are. Because Mob knows that deep down, there's something that made them that way. Maybe they lacked something in their life. Maybe someone made them feel inadequate and insecure. Mob knows this because he's like that too. He knows how crippling it is to be alone, how it feels to be not special. For Mob, facing these enemies is like seeing how he would have been if he let his powers to control him. And self-improvement actually played a role towards Mob's empathy towards others. Since the first step in self-improvement is to actually acknowledge that you have a problem, and he sees the same problem in others as he sees in himself. So he tries his best to pacify his enemies with the power of friendship. But as far as he got in terms of self-development, he could have not done it without the help of none other than Reagan Arataka. Yes, the man who exploited him. Let me explain. Reagan stood as Mob's father figure, even though his father is quite well alive. But Reagan was the only one who truly understood the other side of Mob. Reagan taught Mob the most important lesson, that even though he has supernatural abilities, he shouldn't think of himself as any less or more than others. Of course, Reagan thought Mob was just a dumb child who had an active imagination and didn't really mean what he said, until he saw that Mob wasn't kidding. This dude literally saw something out of this world, and the first thing he thought was, I can make a living out of this. So even though he's a fraud, he promised Mob to teach him how to properly control his powers. And in a way, he kinda did. With an ability as dangerous as Mob's, Reagan thought it was best to teach Mob that these kind of powers should never ever be used against another person. Well, it really didn't last long until Mob started throwing hands. However, he only really resorted to violence when one of his family members' life is on stake. But even then, he refused to as far as to kill people even though they're in imminent danger. This led Mob to an intense inner conflict. If he wants to save his loved ones, then he has to kill. But if he kills, then that would mean that he would have to disobey Reagan. As he was on the verge of breaking, Reagan helped Mob snap out of it and said that it was okay to run away. Mob actually had the means to crush everyone right there and then, but I think the words that Reagan said helped Mob realize that not every problem could be solved with brute force. Sometimes the solution to a problem is to simply just walk away. Just like what my dad did. Maybe the problem will sort itself out, and if it doesn't, you can always come back using the time you spent resting with and look things in a different perspective. Overall, I think this anime is near perfect. The visuals are really amazing, the music is on point, and most important of all, Mob Psycho has taught me a lot of valuable lessons. I really wish this anime had another season going, but apparently season 3 was the final season. Now I'm going to spend my nights knowing Mob Psycho will never get another season. But that's all for this video, and thank you guys for watching.